right. Hello, everybody at UFOB. We are here for another interview here, and I'm actually very excited for this interview. We are going to be interviewing Rey Hernandez. So if you're not familiar with Rey, I would highly recommend to check out his work. But just as a quick background here, Rey is currently the director of the Consciousness and Contact Research Institute, also known as CCRI. This is an academic research institute comprised of more than 25 PhD academics, medical doctors, researchers, whose really their overall mission is just to explore the findings of consciousness research, as well as just the overall concept of what a paranormal experience may be. So in 2018, Rey was part of a team of retired PhD academics and published a very lengthy and very in-depth book here titled Beyond UFOs. I actually have the good old physical copy here. As you can see, pretty lengthy and pretty in-depth. We're talking about some research with 4,300 individuals here across 125 countries. It is also published. There's also been publications here in several peer-reviewed academics. There's also several other books here Rey has published here, including A Greater Reality, as well as like The Mind of God. For even more information on some of the other publications, just hop over on to CCRI's website at greaterreality.com. But before I bring Rey out here, I'm going to have to bring out my co-host, Leif. All right. How are we doing today, Leif?
Good. Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, doing good. All right. And of course, we will bring out Rey Hernandez here. All right, perfect. Rey, how are you doing today?
I'm feeling excellent. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, of course. Yeah, thanks so much for coming on. I'm really excited to have you on. So really just pass over the mantle to you and just take it away.
Well, what I want this discussion to be, I want it to be an introduction in terms of the theories of the many professors and researchers of the Consciousness and Contact Research Institute. So individuals can understand the thesis that we're presenting. And then later on, when both of you have time, I would like to be able to make a formal, lengthy PowerPoint presentation. So this would be just a short presentation outlining the theory behind the work that we have done. But in order to get to that point, I need to be able to present the history of the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation, which was the precursor to the Consciousness and Contact Research Institute, or CCRI. Back in 2013, I was having nonstop paranormal experiences, which first started in March of 2012 after my ex-wife and I saw an energy being in our living room. And this being made her and our dog, who was totally paralyzed, disappear right in front of me. And this intelligence controlled my mind. I didn't care that I was watching this thing. I didn't care that my wife disappeared, that the dog disappeared. I basically waved my hand at it and I said, this is bullshit. This is what she got me up for this crap. I'm going back to sleep, and that's not normal, for anybody. And so I walked up the stairs. I immediately was knocked out in bed. And then an hour later, when I woke up, I was now fully conscious again. And I ran downstairs. And my ex-wife reappeared back again. She rematerialized. And the dog was now running around the entire living room, fully healed. She had a miraculous medical healing. That afternoon, we were going to be bringing her to the vet to euthanize her because she was 15 years old. She was totally paralyzed. So that blew my mind, needless to say, and totally destroyed my mindset of the nature of our reality. And there I began to researching initially the topic of the paranormal, because I didn't know this was UFO related. And then about 2 months later, my wife went outside late at night and she saw this huge UFO, which I now call CAP, or Consciousness Aerial Phenomenon. And she drew it out for me. She described it. I won't go into the details, but that's when I first associated what happened in our living room with UFOs. And then she began to what is now commonly called CE5, or Human Initiated Contact Experiences, HICE. That's the acronym used by my friend, Dr. Joseph Burks. And within minutes, these huge objects would appear in the sky. Some would be material, And many of them would not be material, but they would just be an agglomeration of lights. And then 6 months after that initial experience in our living room, I decided to do what my wife was doing, which was to call down a UFO. And within 15 minutes, this huge object appeared literally 30 feet on top of me. And it was the size of a small football stadium. And it was not material. It was comprised of diverse configurations of lights. And that's a very, very lengthy and complex experience, because that's when I first realized that the intelligence behind what we're dealing with has the ability to upload information from other individuals that you know and to put it in your mind as a telepathic message. It has the ability to respond to your communication telepathically. And that's when I first learned that these were holographic projections. We could talk about that, very important, that concept, after I give my brief introduction. And then it also projected in my mind that I was being attacked by hundreds of mosquitoes. And that led me to grab my daughter's hand and to go inside. And then, so after that experience, I then saw a video the very next day on near-death experiences. I'd never seen anything on NDEs before. And so I was captivated by that. And then all night I stayed up watching NDE videos by NDE experiencers. Then I went off and I ordered approximately 20 books on NDEs and another 10 books on the science of consciousness. And so then it began a journey of constant reading. And that lasted for another 6 months. In 6 months, I read over 300 NDE books and books on the science of consciousness. But over the next 4 years, after I initially saw that UFO, I would have continuous paranormal experiences, which involved seeing beings, going out of body, going into other realities, commonly known as astral travels. I would be getting downloads. I would be getting telepathic information. And these are all non-dream state, because I don't remember any of my dreams, so these are all very live. And one of these experiences, which is what led to the formation of the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation, this was in May of 2013, roughly a little bit more than a year after my initial experience in the living room. I was driving my car to downtown Miami, where at that time I worked as an IRS state tax attorney. And in the middle of a traffic jam at 8:30 in the morning, I was taken out of my body into some other reality, commonly called an astral travel experience, except the vast majority of people that have these experiences are asleep. Some can induce them in a transitory state. People like Tom Campbell and so many of these other major out-of-body experiences, they could induce it while they're awake, and they go out of their body. It's like their body gets put to sleep, but yet they're inducing it while awake. So I was very much awake. I was driving my car in the middle of a traffic jam. I was brought to another reality. And I won't give you all of the details of that experience, but I was given downloads of extensive information about the nature of our reality, which is what we're discussing today. These things are not things that I invented. These are things that were given to me in that experience. And the information relayed was that we're living in a reality that is, for lack of a better words, an illusion. It's a temporary illusion, our physical reality, that we actually are eternal spiritual beings that reside within a very complex virtual reality. And that's a term that humans are associating to describe this, but it has nothing to do with computers, has nothing to do with artificial intelligence. And that this reality is also spiritual, because after we die, our individuated units of consciousness return back to the mind of God, to consciousness itself. So very, very lengthy, very, very detailed. And so when I went to work that day, that experience seemed to last at least a half an hour, but I was actually brought back into my body with no time elapsed, because I was listening to an interview on National Public Radio, and it didn't skip a beat. So I was literally taken outside of space and time. And so when I got to work, I couldn't do any work that day. And so I left early because all I was thinking about was just that experience. And I was freaking out. And then, and when I got home later, when I checked my email in the early evening, I got an email from Mary Rodwell. Mary Rodwell is one of the major researchers of UFO Contact Experiencers. She has been doing that work for over 30 years, and she has worked with over 3,000 individuals that have seen UFOs and have had contact with non-human intelligence. So just to fast track a little bit, back in October, I sent an email to like 10 well-known names in the field of UFO contact. And I had gotten responses back from Whitley Strieber and Grant Cameron, but no one else. So here was Mary Rodwell responding to an email in May, okay? And she said, "Dear Ray, I'm sorry that I'm responding to your emails that you sent to me 6 months ago, but it just popped up onto my computer today, okay?" And so I had sent her my diary of all of my experiences up until October of 2012, which was quite extensive, but they still continued for another 4 years. And then I responded back to her. I said, well, this is my updated diary. And it had like 90 pages. And I wrote to her what had happened that same day in the morning. And so she was like, "Oh my God, Ray, I need to talk to you. I need to talk to you." And so we wound up chatting till like 1:30 in the morning. And so she was very, very much interested because I was a major contact experiencer. And I was telling her information that she had heard from so many other UFO contact experiencers. The very next day at 9:30 in the morning, I got a phone call. And I was like, "Hello, who's this?" "Dr. Rudy Schild." "Who?" I had no idea who this man was. He said, "Mary didn't tell you that I was going to give you a call?" "No, Mary didn't tell me." "Oh, she said that she was going to send you an email." I said, "Well, let me check my emails. I haven't checked them today." And I looked up and there was an email from Mary Rodwell saying, would I give her permission for Rudy to call me? So what he did is he jumped the gun. So he told me that he is an emeritus professor of astrophysics for over 45 years at Harvard University. And he was working with Mary for many years on individuals that had gotten downloads of advanced math, advanced physics, and also consciousness, the nature of our reality. And he also told me that he was a very dear friend of the late Dr. John Mack, the professor at the Harvard School of Medicine, professor of psychiatry, who wrote a book on alien abductions, actually 2 books. And the last one was very, very different from the first one. That was more discussing the contact experience as a multi-dimensional experience, because he had left already the initial guidance by Bud Hopkins. And he realized that Bud Hopkins was completely wrong on his theories of the phenomenon. And he was moving towards the hypothesis that this was a multi-dimensional phenomenon involving a manipulation of space-time. So Rudy was the only professor that supported Dr. Mack during his inquisition at Harvard University. So anyway, all of these experiences are quite lengthy, but let me tell you about Rudy. It's very important. He listened to what happened to me, and he said, "Ray, what you got was a download of Dr. Edgar Mitchell's quantum hologram theory of consciousness." And then he articulated to me what that was, which is very complicated, but it was pretty much what I had gotten in a download state. Towards the very end, he said, "Look, Ray, I volunteered to be your academic advisor for the project that you need to undertake. Because when I was up there in reality, they told me I have to inform humanity of the relationship between consciousness, the spirit world, and them." Okay. And at that point, I had no idea what these terms were, you know. And so Rudy knew that I was given a mission. And he said, "Look, you know," I told him I had no idea what I'm supposed to do. And he says, "Well, whatever you want to do, I'm here to help you. I will be your academic advisor because I have a long history in this field, in this arena." And then he told me, "Write down this telephone number." And I wrote down the telephone number. And I said, "Whose number is this?" He says, "Well, this is the telephone number of my advisor, of the person that got him thinking in that direction, besides Dr. Mack." And I said, "Who is this person?" He says, "Dr. Edgar Mitchell." And so Edgar Mitchell, I already knew about him because he's very well known in the UFO field. He was the founder of the International Association, of Ions, an organization in Petaluma, California. You guys are in the Bay Area, and that is now the world's leading organization that's researching the psi phenomenon. Edgar started that organization in 1972. And also, Edgar was a founder of several other organizations that dealt with near-death experiences. In 1973, he published a book titled Psychic Explorations. And it was a book associating all of the paranormal as one phenomenon under consciousness. Now, he didn't include UFOs, he told me, because there was zero academic research on the UFO phenomenon. And he didn't include NDEs because NDEs did not become well known until the following year when Dr. Raymond Moody published his now seminal NDE book titled Life After Life. But he discussed almost everything else. And so I finally gave Edgar a call 4 hours later because I was very scared of giving him a call. And he invited me to his house the very next day at 10 a.m. So literally within 48 hours of me having that out-of-body experience, I was presented to the three other co-founders of what became known as the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation. And all three of them were heavily involved in researching the UFO phenomenon and the relationship between UFOs and the paranormal and consciousness studies. The consciousness studies folks were Edgar Mitchell and Rudy Schild. So that's not a coincidence. This is not even a synchronicity. I call them orchestrated events. And in my life since this initial experience in March of 2012 have been a series of orchestrated events. So what the Free Foundation did, the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation did, is we began to assemble many individuals from diverse fields. Most of them were PhD academics. We also had many UFO folks, people like Kathleen Martin, Dr. Leo Sprinkle, Dr. Barbara Lamb, Rosemary Ellen Guiley, and many other PhD academics that were associated with our group at that time. We had a PhD neuroscientist, we had another PhD physicist, we had PhD psychologists. One of the major players that became very active in our research committee is Dr. John Klimo. He was a professor of psychology for over 45 years. He taught research methodology and focused mainly on the relationship between consciousness studies and the paranormal. And then we also added other individuals like Dr. Claude Swanson, Dr. Bob Davis, who's a PhD neuroscientist, and many others. So what we did is we spent 9 months developing a methodology on the UFO phenomenon. Why did we focus on that initially? Because there was zero academic data on UFO contact experiencers. The only thing that came close was a study by Dr. Kenneth Ring that he undertook in 1992 titled the Omega Project. But he only had 92 individuals that had UFO abduction related experiences with 92 individuals that had near-death experiences. So he wanted to compare the two phenomena. But again, it was focused on abductees, and it only had less than 200 questions. And so what we did is over 9 months, we developed over 700 quantitative questions and 70 open-ended questions. These are where we asked a general question and we asked them to write out the details. We also conducted these 3 surveys in 4 major languages. The other major language was Spanish. In the English language, we received over 4,300 responses from individuals to our English language survey from over 125 countries. And our research findings totally contradict circulating on the internet, on YouTube, at all these UFO conferences. Totally contradicts it. Why? Because no one's ever done this before. No one ever has seen the data. I think, Paulo, right? You were one of the very few people that actually bought the book and actually read it. Even though I'm giving my book away as a free PDF copy. This book here, 820 pages, I'm giving it away for free, okay, in a PDF version. If you want a paperback copy, you need to go to Amazon. But all you need to do is just send me an email at info, I-N-F-O, at agreaterreality.com. info@agreaterreality.com. And I'll send you this book for free.
Excellent. We'll have that on the description too.
Yeah, and this book has tons of data, pie charts, bar graphs, tons of statistics from our research study. So this is real data from real people that had these experiences from over 125 countries. So one of the tests that our statisticians, we had 2 statisticians that we did, was that we grouped all of our data in geographic areas. One area was the US, another one was Canada, another one was the United Kingdom, another one was all of Europe, and another one was Australia and New Zealand. And we looked at how these individuals responded to each of the questions. And there was less than a 5% variability from how they answered the question. Okay, if people selected number 5, it ranged from 0 to 5. If they selected number 4, okay, almost everybody, 90% of the people said it was a 4. There was a couple people, a small percent that were, above a 4 and a small percent below the 4. But everyone pretty much answered the same way, no matter where they lived. And that's huge to be able to find out that people are having similar experiences all over the world. Now, some of the major findings from this book, there's tons of findings, but let me just go over 4 of them, okay? We wanted to find out whether these experiences were perceived as negative, neutral, or positive experiences. And we know how you phrase the question, you'll get a different response, okay? So we asked this main question in 40 different ways. And what we gathered was that initially, at the very beginning of their experiences, 37%, almost 4 in 10 people, viewed their experience as negative. Okay, 40%. But then, over time, over their life, okay, they began to have additional experiences. And these additional experiences became much more positive. All of a sudden, it wasn't, these scary beings appearing in your living room unannounced. Towards the very end, is they were being brought to other realities and receiving spiritual lessons. A classic case, for example, is Kathleen Martin. She wrote a book about Benning Barney Hill, one of the first studies on the abduction phenomenon. And she itemized all the details of that experience of her aunt, Betty Hill. And so she started off as an alien abduction researcher. Okay. Now she just recently published, titled From Alien Abductions to Spiritual Transformation. She's totally gone the gambit, from alien abduction to spirituality. Why? Because her experiences changed in that way. She was being visited by these beings, early on. And then later on, it was these beings were evolving to energy beings, giving her spiritual lessons. And she also received a medical healing, a miraculous medical healing. Another classic example is Whitley Strieber. He was one of the individuals that started the whole Lanian abduction phenomenon with his book Communion, okay? Whitley's last 5 books have been about spirituality. And he now thanks the intelligence behind the phenomenon for giving him spirituality, for allowing him to communicate with his deceased wife. So these are just 2 examples. But what we found out was that 80% of these UFO contact experiencers went through the same exact changes. By the end, when they were taking the surveys, these people, 80% of them said this was highly positive. The percent that only said it was negative was only 4%. That's it. That's from 4,350 people. And that was over 40 questions that we phrased it that way. We also had questions about transformation. I just discussed to you the spiritual transformative aspects of the phenomenon, which is what I believe is what's taking place, what really is behind the phenomenon. I was at a lecture at Rice University. I was one of the speakers together with Colum
Keller?
Yes, and he's Bigelow's right-hand person, okay? He and I had a separate conversation because he was well known because the Skinwalker Ranch videos are on Netflix or whatever that show is every day of the week. But nobody knows about me. But he knows about my work, and he approached me. And so we had a conversation, and he asked me, Ray, what's the bottom line? What the hell is going on? I said, well, what's going on is that the UFO phenomenon is a consciousness-based phenomenon involving a manipulation of space-time. He said, yep, I agree. I said, well, how come I've never heard you discuss this? He says, well, it's extremely controversial, Ray. But I also agree with that. Then he asked me, Ray, what's the bottom line behind what's going on? Okay. Why are they interacting with us, this intelligence? He doesn't refer them to beings. He doesn't believe these are physical beings coming from a physical planet. These are just manifestations of consciousness, okay, which I'll go into later on. And so I said, well, what's going on is that the individuals are undergoing a spiritual transformation from these experiences. Now, this is a long-term process, but that's the bottom line. This is a spiritually transformative phenomenon. Just like people have had NDEs. People have NDEs. They're not the same person. They're totally transformed. And we actually asked 70 questions from Dr. Kenneth Ring's book, The Omega Project, on the transformative aspects of the phenomenon. And he asked it for both NDE experiencers and UFO abduction experiencers. And what did he find in 1992? That both of these individuals, the NDE group and the alien abduction group, changed in exactly the same way. Exactly. He asked 70 questions. So what we did is we borrowed those. We talked to Kenneth Ring. He was an advisor to our work. And he gave us permission to publish those 70 questions and ask them. So now we didn't have 85 people in each cohort. Now we had 4,350 people that were UFO contact experiencers. And how did they answer? The same exact way that Dr. Kenneth Ring stated in his book, The Omega Project. And it's all in our book. We have a whole section on how do these individuals transform and their worldviews, how do they change? People became less materialistic. They no longer feared death. Becoming famous was not important. They became much more loving. They became much more spiritual. They became less religious. I mean, I could go on and on and on. There were 70 questions. It's in our book. If you're interested, and if you're really interested in this, I'll send you the free PDF copy. Just send me an email. And so I mentioned that to Dr. Carlton Colliher, and he agreed. He says, yeah, that's the bottom line, that what he meant was the folks at Bigelow. And that was why Bigelow sponsored a essay contest a year and a half ago on the survival of physical death. Does consciousness survive, your individuated unit of consciousness survive a physical death? And the person that won that essay was Dr. Jeffrey Mishlove. And he wrote a chapter for our book, A Greater Reality. Another person that was two individuals that were runner-ups for this award, they're also authors for our book. Not two of them, like 3 or 4 of them. One was one of our co-editors of our book, A Greater Reality. I'll also give you that information. If you can see there, Dr. Jeffrey Long, he's a medical doctor. He's one of the world's leading NDE researchers. I'll talk about this book in a couple of minutes. All of these individuals believe that the UFO phenomenon is a consciousness-based phenomenon involving a manipulation of space-time, and that they're all part of what I coined in 2013, part of the contact modalities. And I'll discuss that in a little bit. So I just gave you a couple of findings, but there are literally hundreds of findings that are not discussed at UFO conferences. Why? Because these UFO conferences are conferences that the speakers that they invite are materialists. They believe that the UFO is strictly a physical phenomenon. They're physical beings coming from a physical planet to physically interact with us, okay? Well, two of the main, probably the principal founders of modern ufology do not agree with that, okay? Let me repeat that. Two of the principal founders of modern ufology do not agree that the UFO phenomenon is strictly a materialist phenomenon. They do not involve physical aliens coming from a physical planet, okay? Now, I'm sure both of you know of these names, okay? Dr. J. Allen Hynek, and the other one is Dr. Jacques Vallée. And I dare anyone to disagree with me whether there's any other UFO researcher more prominent than these two individuals. Okay. Dr. Hynek, as everyone here knows, started off as a skeptic. Okay. He was a debunker for Project Blue Book. Then over the years, many years of working there, he realized that this is a very real phenomenon. And that lasted over many, many years. It was only until the last few years of his life where he began to interview UFO contact experiencers. And I personally know of a friend of mine, now deceased, Dr. Virgilio Sanchez Osejo. He and Dr. Hynek used to travel to Latin America to interview major contact experiencers. And the stories that they got were very similar to the ones in the US. And Helio has photos, he has excerpts of their interviews, et cetera, et cetera. So I ran across a videotape interview that Dr. Hynek did shortly before he passed away. And also at the Harvard School of Medicine, Dr. Mack, well, I don't know if it was after Dr. Mack died, it was a conference on the alien abduction phenomenon in UFOs. And in that conference, he gave a lecture. And in that lecture, he stated, I could look up the exact verbiage for you, but if someone sends me an email, I'll send you the exact verbiage and the conference and the date that took place. He basically said that he believes that the UFO phenomenon is not an alien abduction phenomenon. It's not strictly a physical phenomenon. These are not physical beings coming from a physical planet. What he did say was that this was a phenomenon involving multidimensional aspects of our reality. He said that the phenomenon presents itself in a physical and in a consciousness aspect of it. So, for example, let me give you an example of what I'm trying to get at. You bury your Aunt Matilda 2 days ago, okay? 2 days after you bury her, you see your Aunt Matilda in the middle of your living room in her favorite Sunday dress. You even smell the perfume that she used. So answer the question, is Aunt Matilda alive or is she dead? Okay, the answer is both. Okay, you physically are seeing her, okay, but you know that she's physically dead. Okay, so these are aspects of consciousness of our greater reality. And I go into much more detail about that aspect. It's called dual aspect monism, which is a philosophical term. I discuss all of that in this book, The Mind of God. Okay, I can give this book to you for free as a PDF copy. I mean, how many other people are out there giving books for free? Okay, this is for free because this is meant to educate humanity.
And those are very big books.
Well, this is the shortest of the books. This is only 220 pages.
Well, that's right. But either way, it's great for you to be doing that, and we appreciate it.
You're welcome. This book, The Greater Reality, there are 4 volumes to this. I've already published 2 volumes. Each one is over 100 pages, okay? Volume 1 and 2 are theoretical academic articles written by Ph.D. academics and medical doctors discussing how all of the paranormal is associated to consciousness, okay? This is brand new stuff. It's hot off the press, but yet that's where people are heading. After I die, 20 years from now, people are going to be discussing this book. Not now, because people don't understand it. It's a new paradigm. It's like when quantum physics first evolved, Einstein called it, spooky action at a distance. He totally disregarded it. Now, the whole electronic field is based upon quantum physics. So it's a new paradigm. And if anyone is interested in that concept, there's a book written in 1962 titled The Structure of Scientific Evolution, which is about paradigm changing events. The other person that totally believes the same way was Dr. Jacques Vallée. I encourage everyone to read his book, Passport to Magonia. If you're truly interested in understanding the UFO phenomenon, read one of the pioneering books by one of the pioneers of modern ufology, Dr. Jacques Vallée. And Dr. Jacques Vallée basically said the same thing. This is back in 1974. So I'm not saying anything new. All these other professors are not saying anything new. This is discussed since the time of Jacques Vallée and Alan Hynek in the early 70s. And he also said he doesn't believe that the UFO phenomenon as a phenomenon involving physical beings, physical aliens, coming from physical planets in a physical craft. Okay, these are just presentations of the phenomena. Let me transition to this concept of holographic projections, because that was a term I first became acquainted with. First of all, before that, with Dr. Edgar Mitchell, his article that he wrote back in the mid 70s was titled "The Quantum Holographic Theory of Consciousness," and he developed that article over the years, and which resulted in a document that was published in 1996 in the Harvard Journal of Astrophysics. So it's not an easy read, but it's meant for the layperson, but it's not easy. And we have that article published in volume 1 of this book by Dr. Edgar Mitchell. That's his magnum opus. Before that, Dr. Jacques Vallée, one of his books, I think it was on Passport to Magonia, he talked about several experiences of certain individuals he interviewed, and he said, this is like a holographic projection. That led me to review my initial experience, and let me describe it for you. It might take a little time, but it's very important for your audience members to understand just how complicated is this phenomenon. Here I was watching this physical object comprised of hundreds of oblong streaks of light. These oblong streaks of light were like 6 blocks in length, and they would be like either 90 degrees, stop and then continue, or they would do 180-degree loops. But there were hundreds of them, so it formed like the whole skeleton of this object. And it was, I said before, it's literally the bottom of it was 30 feet on top of me. Okay. Now there were a total of 5 witnesses to this. Myself, my then 10-year-old daughter, who's now 21 years old, about to graduate from Skidmore College, and going on to medical school, and 3 adult witnesses. Okay. So these 3 adult witnesses, there was a couple and their 17-year-old daughter. So then the adults, the couple, began to question what they were watching. And I said, you know damn well what you're watching. They said, no, it can't be. It's impossible. So then they began to try to explain it away in materialistic terms. So after like about 2 minutes of different explanations, I just busted out laughing, because I didn't tell them that I had called down this object, and that appeared within 15 minutes of me calling it down. And then all of a sudden, I communicated with this intelligence. I don't know why I did it. I did it with my mind. And I was raised in New York City with a filthy mouth. Okay. And so what I communicated with this intelligence was, you better come up with some better bullshit than this, because my friends don't believe you. Immediately after I thought that, what I was watching was totally erased, wiped out. And immediately something totally different replaced it. What replaced it was about 50 huge orbs of light. They were like Volkswagens, the size of Volkswagens. And they was very close to the ground. And they weren't, 100 feet up in the sky. These were all very close. And all of them were blinking on and off, on and off, on and off, on and off. And then they would take turns, what I call powering up. They would then get big, very big. And then they would get small again. Then another one would take turn, getting big and very small again. Now, these were colored white. It wasn't orange or colored like the sun. These were white colors. And then the blinking on and off is like a fluorescent light behind a bicycle. You see those lights that go like this? It was like that. And so immediately my friend stopped explaining this, because you can't explain that of what just took place. And it was later on, upon reflection, I realized, oh my God, the intelligence behind this phenomenon was reading my conscious communication and totally deleted what I was watching, because it wasn't serving its purpose, and replaced it by something totally different. Okay. Now, the whole UFO literature is filled with this phenomenon of some people seeing it, other people not seeing it, of the object that they're watching totally gets changed into something totally different. And so what Jacques Vallée said back in 1974 was that this seemed to me like a holographic projection. What it is, it's a holographic projection, not into your physical reality, but into your individual consciousness. So you as an individual are perceiving it. Okay, in reality, it doesn't exist in a physical reality. It's not a physical object. Okay, but it's a projection. Okay, just like Aunt Matilda. Is Aunt Matilda the physical body of Aunt Matilda appearing in your living room? Or is it a holographic projection? Now, how many people have seen a deceased relative or a deceased person? We're talking about millions of people that have been documented in books, in YouTube, and stories all over the place. This is a very common phenomenon. Okay. When you have an out-of-body experience or when you have a near-death experience, okay, you bring along with these experiences, and what happens, just for the people that don't know anything about this phenomenon, is that your individuated unit of consciousness, your soul, your energy, your spirit, whatever you might want to call it, separates from your physical body. Okay, your physical body might be asleep or it might be underneath you, and your consciousness, your soul, your spirit then travels into another domain, okay, another reality, another dimension. And in that physical reality, you're interacting with things that are perceived to be physical, okay? In a near-death experience, people are seeing deceased relatives. They're seeing scenes of nature. They're seeing buildings. They're interacting with a being, usually an energy being that they associated as God. Okay, people are given a life review that is shown all aspects of their life, the good and the bad and the ugly. Not to judge them, to send them to hell, no, but so that in the individuated unit of consciousness can learn about the phenomena. Okay, and then almost everybody is told they need to return. Nobody wants to return back. No, that's hell down here. I don't want to go back. No, you gotta go back. You still got things to do. But in this reality of both out-of-body experiences, astral travel experiences, and near-death experiences, you see, okay, you believe you're seeing it with your eyes, but your eyes are down there in your body, but you're seeing things. You're hearing this, but all the hearing is telepathic. Never have I heard a case where someone's flapping their lips and talking to you, and you're hearing it with your ears. It's all mind to mind. So what I'm getting at is that the commonalities of the various paranormal phenomena, I discuss them in details in this book, The Mind of God. That's why I lay out a theoretical framework for analyzing how all the paranormal is associated with consciousness, okay? I also present a history of consciousness, of idealism, back from the early philosophies, the Vedic philosophy of ancient India, tracing it forward to contemporary times. So these are not modern concepts. These are concepts that have been discussed since the dawn of mankind. And then for more information about the work that we're doing and the theory behind it, they're not easy to digest because everyone is trained as a materialist because this is our physical reality. Okay, it's difficult for you to think outside of materialism, but what I encourage is if people are interested about the theoretical aspects of our work, to send me an email at info, INFO, at agreaterreality.com. And I will send you free copies of all of my books. Later on, when I publish volume 3 and volume 4 of the A Greater Reality book series, I will send you those copies for free as well as PDF copies. If you want a physical copy, then I'm not Donald Trump, okay? I'm not a billionaire like he says he is, okay? So you'll have that little joke there. You'll have to go to Amazon to acquire a physical copy of it, but I am giving away for free the PDF copies of all of my books. So in here, just go over very quickly the topic headings. For volume 1, we go over an example of Dr. Melinda Greer. She's a retired medical doctor. She's had everything and the kitchen sink. She's had 2 NDEs, numerous out-of-body experiences. She's seen 14 UFOs. She's had contact with physical beings, including contact with Sasquatch, not once, but 3 times. And Sasquatch was right on top of her, for like a whole night. Unbelievable, her experience. After her second NDE, she began to see dead people at the hospital that she worked with. Now, this is a medical doctor. This is an extremely bright and gifted intellectual person, but she never spoke to anybody about her experiences because she was still working as a medical doctor. So that's an example of the phenomenon of how it's all interrelated. And volumes 3 and 4 are going to be filled with similar chapters, such as the one that's here in this book of Dr. Melinda Greer. We start our section here with the primacy of consciousness, that consciousness is fundamental and not our physical reality. And we've got articles there by numerous PhD academics discussing that. And I won't go into the names, but if you take out our book, if you're into consciousness studies, you'll recognize these names. We then get into the whole aspect of non-local consciousness, telepathy, and the quantum hologram. And that is how we, as individuated units of consciousness in our physical reality, are able to tap into this other reality. And that was headed off by the article by Dr. Edgar Mitchell. He discusses that, how that takes place, and numerous other PhDs. And then we get into the different paranormal topics. We have a whole chapter on out-of-body experiences, a chapter on lucid dreams, and that's all in volume 1. And then in volume 2, we have various chapters about near-death experiences, survival of human consciousness. The next chapter is we have 11 articles on the UFO phenomenon, which I coined UCAPs, or consciousness aerial. So in these 11 articles, they discuss that UFOs might not be physical objects coming from a physical planet, et cetera, that UFOs are a consciousness-based phenomenon. So this 11, you're really interested in wanting to find out, get to the bottom of the line of what's going on here. These 11 articles will give you that foundation. And then we have 11 articles. Then we have 5 articles discussing ghost spirits and spiritual transformation. We have another section written by several PhD academics discussing entheogens, things like ayahuasca, LSD, magic mushrooms, psilocybin, etc., the academic research. And there's one article in here that is titled, for example, Survey of the Subjective, Got Encounter Experiences, Comparisons among naturally occurring experiences of those occasioned by the classical psychedelics, psilocybin, LSD, ayahuasca, DMT. So it's comparing the entheogenic experiences to the near-death experience, okay? And right here, they're laying it out. It's almost exactly the same way. Obviously, there are differences, but the parallels between the two phenomena, arguing that this might possibly be a consciousness-based phenomenon. And then we have 4 articles that are conclusionary articles. So that's volumes 1 and 2, which are theoretical articles. And then this book here is very short. I wrote it very simple language so anyone can understand it. And it's my attempt to lay out the theoretical construct of what we're trying to get at with this research. And it's titled The Mind of God. And I won't go into these details, but take a look at it. It's for free. It's the shortest of the books. So if you don't like to read, get this one here, read this one. It's 200 pages, and it's for free as a PDF copy. And then what I hope to do, what I'm working right now, is I believe I sent you, Leif, I don't know if you've seen it or not, it's a draft of volume 3, which is our experiencer chapters.
Yes.
Now, yes, these are chapters written by major experiencers of the contact modalities. These individuals have had, each one of them, they've seen UFOs, they've had a near-death experience, they've had an out-of-body experience, travel experience, they've seen dead people, and different combinations. Some people have not had a near-death experience, but they've had everything else, okay? Some people have had everything else, except they haven't seen a UFO. But the overwhelming majority of these people have had the combination of all of them. And so there's about 20 articles, and they're all written by these individuals, and it's going to be in volume 3. And what I sent you was just a draft. I still have to finish polishing it up a little bit. And I'm currently working on volume 4, which is the same concept. It's just a continuation because we have so many people that wanted to contribute chapters of their experiences. And again, arguing that all of the paranormal needs to be studied as one phenomenon under consciousness. It's all interrelated. And they cannot be studied separately, like the UFO materialists, Roswell, Rendlesham Forest, UFO pictures, UFO videos. That's what UFOs is all about. NDEs, what the hell does NDEs have to do with it? Out-of-body experience, what the hell does out-of-body experience have to do with it? The paranormal, what the hell does the paranormal have to do with all of this? Okay? You go to a UFO conference and you talk to the speakers, that's what they'll tell you. And me, I'm laughing to their face. I said, you know, my mind, I'm thinking, you're fucking clueless. You're totally fucking clueless. Yet they invite you to give these UFO lectures, you know? And so that's why Jacques Vallée disassociated himself with traditional mainstream materialist ufology many, many, many years ago. You know, I'll stop right there because I always get in trouble discussing about materialist ufologists. So that's what we're heading towards. You know, my next project, which I want to start in late fall, and let me give you the actual working title of it. And I've got it right here. Let me just look it up real quickly. It's a book that's going to be arguing for the first time in an academic way, in a book format, that the UFO contact phenomenon is a consciousness-based paranormal phenomenon. There's one individual that I'm writing a review of her book, Dr. Phyllis Atwater. She's one of the main pioneers in NDE research. As I stated earlier, the work of Dr. Kenneth Ring, he discovered the similarities between the NDE phenomenon and the UFO phenomenon, okay? And that resulted in two books that he published in the early 90s. I think the most important one is titled The Omega Project, where he associated both phenomena as one integrated phenomenon. And then Phyllis Atwater is just finishing a book. Hopefully she'll finish it in May, discussing the alien abduction phenomenon and the E phenomenon, because many people that have had near-death experiences, they talk about UFO contact. They talk about, you know, perceived alien abductions. And what it is that the individual's consciousness is being brought to another reality. It's not their physical body. You know, you physically see this intelligence here, but then your individuated unit of consciousness is then brought to another reality, similar to like an out-of-body experience. So she's writing about that. So, but what I'm going to be discussing in my next forthcoming book is discussing the relationship between UFOs and consciousness. And let me give you the exact title here. The exact title here, all of my books, no one has been interested in them, you know. So let me give you something that might draw their attention a little bit. So I put here, the UFO Bible, okay? Hopefully that'll give some attention to people. The UFO Bible, an argument that UFOs, or CAPs, is a consciousness-based phenomenon involving a spiritual and virtual reality. So that is sort of like the working title. I expect to begin that work in the fall, and hopefully sometime next year to finish it. And I said, as I said before, is a lot of people in YouTube podcasts are discussing UFOs and consciousness, but really there's no meat to the bone here, you know. They're just giving abstracts here. I've got data from the UFO Contact Experiencers. They're discussing this relationship. So I want to be able to provide it, information from the scientists involved in CCRI, together with the data in my many years of doing UFO contact research. So that's what I'm all about. That is sort of like a 1 hour summary.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much. It's almost like where to begin with questions. But first, I have a comment, and I think it's really overarches why there's so much, I guess you could say, ignorance or so many different perspectives about ufology and the overall concept that it's related to. Is how many years did it take to actually get an academic publication about UFOs? 2000 something? Again, 2000 something. And how long have these experiences been going on? For one, kind of advocate it's been historically a historical phenomenon when it comes to humans. There's always been these experiences, and why I really value this work is because it's not, it finally looks at it as really a large system, that, has really just been, compartmentalized and divided, and there's lucid dreaming here. Oh, here we have, spiritual experiences, and here's, extraterrestrial experiences, but it's really one big phenomena that really has to be studied more. That's why I really value a lot of this work here. But for questions, any questions off the hand, Leif? I have a couple that I was jotting down as Ray was kind of giving the intro, but yeah, fire away.
I am so happy that you're doing this work, Ray, because I think so many members at UFOB on the Reddit, many of them are willing to go in the consciousness realm, but others aren't. So I think this work is so important because so many of them look at, say, abduction phenomenon and listen to some of those people and just go, well, that might be a step too far for me, but it is not a step too far. And Adam and I are easily, again, we want to have a coffee mug, a UFOB, embrace the woo, because this is what it's about. But the woo has a very, very physics-based definition, and it's quantum physics, it's many other things, the holographic universe, and it's important for people to embrace this, what you're saying. Consciousness and the contact modalities are incredibly important. And again, you're ahead of your time, I believe. Many people
I think so.
Yeah, I think many people, again, back in the 60s, we had the hippies saying we're coming into the age of Aquarius, and they were very spiritual. Yeah, I kind of often say I think they were ahead of their time, but they were just going at it the wrong way, unfortunately. Well, not the wrong way, but a different way. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
Your work is amazing, and we will have the links down on our description for you. Adam, your question.
Let me just respond to what you just said. Probably the most well-known, quote-unquote, ufologist, even though he's not a researcher in this field, he's a historian, is Richard Dolan. He's all over YouTube, Netflix, and all this and that. Okay. That guy makes me laugh, man, because he's such a fucking clown. I'm
a fanboy. Hold on. Go ahead.
Well, let me just say, in several of his interviews, he's publicly stated that David Jacobs is the best researcher in this arena of UFO contact. Okay. Now, David Jacobs stated publicly that he's never met a UFO contact experiencer that's had a positive experience. Not one. They've all been negative. Okay. Yet our data of 4,000 or the people, you go to a UFO conference, half of the people they're in the floor, listening to these people, they're experiencers. Okay. These people, the overwhelming majority have not been negative experiences. They have not had abductions. Okay. We have an article by the ex-wife of Bud Hopkins. Okay. She wrote an article about all the leading questions these people were asking. When they got people that had a negative experience, they disinvited them. Maybe you need to see Leo Sprinkle. Maybe you need to see Barbara Lamb. Maybe you need to see, Mary Rodwell or some of these other folks. So they're pre-selective, okay? And then she had posted on her website on YouTube various videos of Jacob's interviews. And one of them had this lady that had reptilian experiences. Before the interview, the regression, last week I had a lady with a reptilian experience. Oh, the reptilian raped her up the ass, blah, blah, blah. And so by the time it came down to her regression, the woman is totally traumatized. These are just examples, that I'm throwing out. And this is not research. This is hypnotic regression, which has been demonstrated by a biased person can be totally manipulated, their outcome. Okay. And so
quickly, what do you think about John Mack? Instead, he never hypnotized someone, but he did holotropic breathing. What do you think of that?
Yeah, all you're trying to do is to get someone to relax. That's all it is. Okay. Holotropic breathing, as the yogis have been doing it for tens of thousands of years, and all it is to get you in an altered state of consciousness where your mind can tap into this greater reality. And one of it is your prior memories of what occurred, that might have been blocked or whatever. And so Dr. John Mack, people don't understand. His first book, titled Alien Abductions, was based upon the clients that were sent to him by Bud Hopkins. Okay, that was that first book was all about. So these are people already had, worked with Bud Hopkins for years. They've been traumatized, horrific experiences, blah, blah. So he wrote a book about what these people told him, okay? But then after he published that book, he began to get tons of emails and correspondence from people that had radically different types of experiences, very similar to a book Beyond UFOs, right? And then he began to correspond with these people that were close by. He brought them into his office, and he realized that, oh my God, I was totally off base, before. Yes, is perceived very, very, very physical. Yes, initially it was perceived very, very negative. But then towards the end, he said, this is all about spiritually transformative experiences. And these are involved the manipulation of space-time. These are consciousness-based phenomena. And Rudy told me a lot of the details that Dr. John Mack initially went to Rudy. He says, Rudy, is it possible to have multiple dimensions? Because a lot of these people are telling me, look, I was brought to another reality. And Rudy said, yes. In modern cosmological physics and astrophysics, they're discussing about that, discussing that possibility. And he began educating Dr. John Mack that, yes, there might be other realities that our human consciousness might be perceiving. And so he was the one that introduced this initially to Dr. Mack, but even before then, it was the actual experiencers that was telling this to Dr. John Mack. So his final book, his second book, was titled Passport to the Cosmos. Okay? Nothing to do with alien abductions. Okay? Passport to the Cosmos. Okay? And they had another subtitle associated with it, which I forgot, but you guys can look it up. But anyway, Richard Dolan called our work woo-woo scientists. It's woo-woo science, the book Beyond UFOs. Now, does Richard Dolan have a PhD? No. Okay? Is he a scientist? No. Okay? Is he familiar at all with all these theories of consciousness studies, all these advanced theories? No. Has he done any type of statistical work on UFO contact experiencers? No. Okay? Yet, who has all the PhD scientists? We did. We had astrophysicists. We had PhD in regular physics. Claude Swanson was a PhD in physics from Princeton University, where Einstein taught. Bob Davis was a professor of neuroscience at Ohio State University. Okay? We had two PhD statisticians in our group. Okay? Dr. Raul Valverde and Dr. Russell Scalpone. Two PhD statisticians. Okay? And yet he had the balls to call our work woo-woo science. Okay? The guy doesn't even have a fucking PhD.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah, but that's what's circulating out there. I'm not invited to any of these speakers, to any of these major UFO conferences. You'll get Richard Dolan on each and every one of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just so you know, the John Mack book is Passport to the Cosmos, Human Transformation and Alien Encounters is the sub.
You see, exactly what I'm talking about. It's about human transformation. Okay. And one of those major components is spirituality, probably the major component of the transformation, spiritual transformation. And that's the same output that you get from an NDE experiencer, the same output from an out-of-body experiencer.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think I was going to say, I don't know if you've seen the Jesse Michaels interview with Diana Pasulka, but at one point they both agreed that people that experience these things are going to either go in two directions. They're either going to transform well or take it badly and go in a bad way. But
what we discovered was that was only 5%.
Yeah.
Because if it might take 20 years to get there, but eventually, people transition. Okay. Now, Diane is not familiar with our data. I've sent her the book, Beyond UFOs, but I doubt that she has read it. She'll know a little bit about it, but in order to discuss apples to apples, oranges to oranges, you need to talk with someone that knows about the apples. Very few people have actually read the data in our book.
Well, let's talk about the apples, because I know you have to go soon. So, Adam, what were those other questions?
Yeah. Just real quick, I'm really surprised Dolan would make a comment like that. And the only thing, obviously, I can't speak for Dolan, but the only thing I could think of maybe and you mentioned it earlier too, when you were going over really the foundation of everything. People want to see video of the UFO. They want to see, the picture and all this thing. Everything else is, oh, I don't care. All that isn't really evidence. But no, actual evidence is conducting research on, people who've had experiences across the globe. And yeah, it'd be nice to see a picture and things like that, but that's not what really your work is describing. It's describing something much more complex than, a clank metal spaceship or, an extraterrestrial that essentially, evolved or, has consciousness similar to us, like, physical body, brain, things like that. That, seems to be not really accurate in terms of what actual occurs from experiences and really when you look at things through a big picture. But it's just very odd to say a comment like that when really there really hasn't been research, design, or study at this volume for experiencers. So that's really just hard.
If you go to Amazon and you type in Richard Dolan and his latest book, I forgot the exact name of it, but it's like the Alien Abduction Bible or something like that. Maybe Leif, if you could look it up, and actually started laughing.
I know he has alien agendas, and I read that one.
Yes, the alien agenda. Here's this man who's never researched, UFO Contact Experiencers, is writing a book that he knows of the alien agenda. Well, what I found out was that he was getting his data from Bud Hopkins, from David Jacobs, and all these alien abduction researchers. These are all secondary resources. And I've taken PhD level statistics classes. I went to Berkeley for my PhD. Okay, I'm ABD, all but dissertation. I never finished my dissertation because my first wife had a brain aneurysm and she eventually died. Okay, so I had to quit that and take 2 full-time jobs. But if not, I'd be now a retired faculty member from a prestigious university. Okay, so here's this man saying that he knows the alien agenda. Okay, and people buy that. That book has sold more than 100 times more than Beyond UFOs. Now, isn't that some crazy shit right there?
I'd say, yeah, yes.
Anyway, we can continue our lectures here because I have 2 members of the family here right in front of me staring at me.
Gotcha. Okay.
Really, honestly, thanks so much for really just providing really just the foundation you've already done with your work and all the additional publications that are coming out. And really thanks for taking the time out to hopefully educate some of the audience here and really just open perspectives and to really kind of factor in that this whole phenomena is very complex, way more complex than what we understand.
We have 0 answers. Yep. The only thing we could do is raise more questions.
Yeah, and that's really something that I try to advocate. It's way more complex than just, really advanced technology, even though that does seem to be occurring, but probably not in a way that we really recognize as technology.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and for this presentation. And of course, thank you, Rey, for all the information and the explanations that you provided. We're definitely going to have Rey back in the near future to go really just a more in-depth dive about some of the statistics and some of the work about these surveys conducted in Beyond UFOs. So stay tuned for that. Have a great one and stay tuned to UFOB. Thank you.